Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be building out a navigation bar in Figma. I'll be showing you how to wireframe, take that into the design stage, and how to build out a navigation bar that's ready to hand to developers or to develop yourself. We'll also talk about responsive design and how you can carry your desktop navigation bar across to smaller screen widths and mobile devices. As arguably the most important part of your web page, the navigation bar helps your users navigate your website and find the pages they're looking for, and ultimately can help them convert into customers. So it's really essential that you grasp this concept as a designer. So without further ado, and feel free to join in as we go, let's hop into Figma and get started with the design. So here we are in Figma, and I've gone ahead and opened up a brand new design file. And I've also, just to speed things up, put together a very simple wireframe. So for those of you who are new to Figma, Figma is a collaborative cloud-based design tool that's very quickly become the industry standard for, to be honest, a lot of different applications, from website design to social media design, email design. It's a really great all-round design tool, great for collaboration, not only just between you and other designers, but also with your clients. So let's say you're building out a landing page, your clients can hop into the design file and thread comments and feedback throughout. So a really great cloud-based collaboration tool. But also it really simplifies the design process, and I'm sure you'll see why as we go. So as I said, I've put together a very simple wireframe just to get us started. And if you're not familiar with what a wireframe is, it's effectively a really stripped back, really basic to assemble design, just to help you understand the structure and layout of your final design. So particularly useful for user experience designers to have a look at how the final application is going to work for the users. You can see here from this wireframe, we've got the logo on the left-hand side, 3 easy to use links in the middle, and a button on the right-hand side. So we know straight away that we can see this is spacious, this is clean, it's not overcrowded with different UI elements, and it's very familiar. And that's all with these really basic fundamental shapes. We've got circles, rounded rectangles, and it's recognizable, but we haven't spent so long on it that it was difficult to put together. So rearranging things and playing around with a few different layout ideas is very easy in the wireframe stage, and that's exactly why we do this. To build out our design, we're going to start by adding a frame. And if you've watched my beginner series for Figma, you'll notice this is how I start any project, is just to contain or wrap your elements in a frame. So we're going to do this by either coming up to the top and clicking on the frame icon, or as it says just below, you can hit the F key on your keyboard. The next thing we want to do is select the size of the frame we need. So we're looking to build a desktop landing page initially. Obviously, we're just going to be building out the navigation bar, but it still helps to have the right frame size. So on the right-hand side, underneath design and underneath the desktop drop down, you should see desktop. So we're just going to click this, and this is going to create a frame for us that's the right size for a desktop design. So this is where your web page or your landing page will go. It might grow much longer, depending on what you're designing. But for us, obviously, we're just going to be focusing on this top section because we're going to be building out a navigation bar design. So we're going to add another frame within our desktop frame, and we can just click and freely drag this one. I'm going to make it 1200 pixels wide. It's become the sort of size that I use, but you can use anything you want as long as it's somewhat smaller than the desktop frame it's contained within. I'm also going to use this button here to align it to the top of my desktop frame. Next, I'm going to start dragging in and adding the elements of the navigation bar based on the wireframe above. So we've got that logo. We know we want to drag that in, and slowly drag until you can see the border of that navigation bar frame go blue. And I'm just going to minimize the wireframe on the layers panel just so you can see things a little bit clearer. You've got the desktop layer at the top. You've got frame 4, which we're going to rename navigation bar. And then you've got the logo, and I'm renaming that as well, just to make things nice and clear. So here's your structure. On the outside, you've got the desktop. On the inside, you've got the navigation bar. And then inside the navigation bar, you've got the logo. So if you ever get stuck on where the layers are sat and if they're working incorrectly, it's a good place to go to just check to make sure things are working as expected and answer any questions if something comes up. Quite commonly, you go to export something and some part is missing that you can see on the canvas, but it's not exporting with a final file. And it's quite simply because if I move this logo outside, it looks perfect. It looks like it's in the right place. But if I start moving the desktop around, you'll see that it's got nothing to do with that sort of layer. So just make sure that your layers are structured correctly, because now as I move my desktop design, you can see it's contained there. So let's go ahead and add the other elements we need. We can see we've got 3 links in the middle. And just to make this easy, I'm just going to add 3 text blocks. So click the T key on your keyboard, or again, come up to the top and click on the text icon. And we're just going to click once to start adding text. And I'm going to say about us can be our first link. Holding down Alt and clicking and dragging duplicates the same layer. Pressing Enter to edit the text. I'm then going to do a blog link, and we'll do that one more time. So press Alt, click and drag, press space to start editing the text, and we'll do contact us. 3 very generic and very overused names for pages there, but It just helps you understand what we're doing. The next thing we want to add is our button on the right-hand side. And trust me, I know that this is looking dreadful right now. We've got text in random places. The layout's awful. It will all come together eventually. So the next thing we're going to do is add that button. So I'm going to start with the text layer on the inside, and we'll wrap that with a box that we'll call the kind of background of the button. So selecting any one of these, and we're going to do the same thing again, Alt and drag. We'll change this to sign up. So this can act as our kind of main call to action, or the main thing we want our users to do. And to start adding the background, there's many ways you can do this. And to be honest, there's no real right way. A common way people do it is by adding a rectangle behind it. And I'll just show you that now. So if I add a rectangle about the same size and then just move it to the back, and we can select both of them and come up here and align center and align middle, and it works. So you can see you've got the background. We can add the border radius. The problem with this for design is if I then change the text in the middle to say something like, sign up today, as the text grows longer, this is not responding to the width correctly. And we then need to go in and manually adjust that. If that doesn't bother you and this looks great for what you need, then there's honestly no reason not to do this. But I'm going to delete that background rectangle and do things the way I'm used to and the way that I think is more standard practice, particularly for website design. We're going to add a frame to contain our text. So the sign up text is going to be wrapped in a frame that we can then add some spacing either side on the top and bottom, but we can also tell that frame to automatically adjust its width and height based on the content within. So right click and go frame selection, or with your element selected, Control, Alt, and G. And now nothing's going to change visually, but if you come over to your layers panel on the left, you can see there's now a frame selected called frame 4. I'm just going to name that button. And if you open that up, you can see that the sign up text is now contained within button. So select the button, select the frame, and come over to the right-hand side, and we're going to turn on auto layout. What this is going to allow us to do is, as you can see up here at the top, so can you see here where it says hug and hug? What that's effectively saying is that the width and height of the frame is set to automatically adjust to hug the content within. So if I add a little background color, so you can see, if I make it a really horrible red, and now select my text layer and change the text and add that today, you can see that the frame is automatically adjusting its width based on the content within. So let's get rid of that horrible red color. Let's select our button. Let's go down to where it says fill. We're going to click on the little rectangle here where we can see the color. We're going to click here on the dropper tool, and we're going to take it over the logo so we can sample that exact color. Also really not liking how the black looks against this kind of purplish color. So we're going to come down to selection colors, and you can see here with what we've got selected, which is our button, there are two colors in this area. We've got the color we've just added, that kind of purple, and then we've got the black. So if we select this rectangle and make it white, we can change that text color to be white. The next thing we need to do is some padding on the left and right and on the top and bottom. So with this automatically being set to the height and width of the shape, all we need to do is come down to where it says auto layout and add some horizontal and vertical padding. A general rule of thumb for me is that the horizontal padding is around twice the size of the vertical padding for a button to look nice. So I tend to go with around 12 and 24. And as you can see, that's now starting to take shape. You can see it looks a bit more like a button. And the last thing we're going to do is add that border radius. So coming up to the top where you've got this kind of rounded corner, we're just going to drag that up until it looks nice. And again, that's based off of the wireframe, so perfectly rounded, and we are getting there. So now we've got all of our elements in the navigation bar. The next step is layout. So how we actually make this work visually so that it's structured in the way it should be. So as you can see with our wireframe, we've got the logo on the left, we've got the 3 links in the middle, and we've got the button on the right. So those 3 links at the moment, let's start here. They're all over the place. We've got one contact us that's raised up high, we've got one in the middle, and again, they're just not lined up perfectly. So we're going to select all 3. And a quick way of doing this is to hold Control and Shift and select all of those layers. And then we're going to right click to add a frame, and we're going to come over to auto layout and click on that plus icon. So what we've done here is we've selected all 3 of our links, we've wrapped them in a frame, and we've added auto layout so they now are aligned perfectly. And we've also got this horizontal gap that we can specify. So I'm going to go around 32 pixels of spacing, and now this looks a bit more uniform. And this can also sit in the middle. So as you can see, we're getting there now. We've got the main elements in place. So before we lay out the menu as a whole, I just want to quickly do something for organization's sake. So let's come over to the layers panel, and that frame we've added to wrap our navigation links, we're just going to name it, just to keep things tidy, nav links. So we have now 3 elements in our navigation bar. We have our logo, we have our nav links, and we have our button. But again, they're all freely placed and they're not the tidiest in terms of layout and structure. So that's what we're going to work on next. So just checking over our wireframe again, what we can see is that the elements of the navigation bar fill the available width. And what I mean by that is the logo sits all the way on the left and the button fits all the way on the right. And then the nav menu squeezes itself in the middle. And the gap between the logo and the nav menu, and then between the nav menu and the button, is the same. So they want to fill the width, but also have the perfect amount of space between both sides. So to do this, either come to the layers panel on the left and select your navigation bar, or just move your cursor around until you see that frame we added earlier for the navigation bar. And we're going to do this with auto layout. So with that frame selected, let's come to the design panel and click plus next to auto layout. And what you might have noticed happen is in the setup for your frame at the top, where we had the 1200 pixels of width before, it's now set the width to hug, just as it did with our button, which is exactly what we wanted in that context, but now we want to keep that fixed width. So where it says hug, let's change that to fixed width, and let's set it back to whatever you had before. Mine was at 1200. Height can be set to hug, and then we're going to start working with some of these values in the auto layout setup. So initially, you've got the settings for the auto layout itself, so you can do it vertically, horizontally, or to wrap. We're going to have ours horizontal, because as you can see with the wireframe, they are stretched out horizontally. And the next thing that's needing adjusting is the gap between items. So if I start dragging this, you can see we've got 166 pixels of space between the logo and the menu, and then the menu and the button. So as I click and drag this, you can see it's manually adding that spacing. Now, we mentioned before, we want the spacing to be equal, but we also want the elements to take up the available width. And there's a really quick way to do this. So use this drop down to the right-hand side of the horizontal spacing and click on auto. What this means is that it's going to try its best to fill the available space and equally space between the elements. So the logo is now going to be all the way on the left. It's going to push the last element all the way to the right, and then it's going to space the middle item as perfectly as it can between those two. So we have a gap here and here that's automatically set based on the element's widths, but also perfectly identical. So the spacing between the logo and the menu, and then the menu and the button are now identical. The next thing to do, we've already got the height set to hug, but we want a kind of, well, effectively we want to sort out the padding. That's what the next step is. And if you have a look at our wireframe, you can see that we've got a padding on the left and right of 24 and on the top and bottom of 24. It's just a nice uniform kind of spacing to use. So we're going to click our navigation bar again, and we're going to use these two horizontal and vertical padding tools to just add 24 pixels to the top and bottom and to the left and right. Now, as you can see, the height is set to hug. So what we're doing here is setting the height to the height of the content within, plus 24 pixels of padding on the top and bottom. And then for the width, 1200 pixels wide, including 24 pixels on the left and on the right. So this is now the design we're going for. We've got our navigation bar at the top, we've got our spacing and padding, we've got our three elements, and we've got our spacing sorted. So as I said before, if you're designing a full landing page or website, you can then go from here and start designing further down onto the page. We're focusing solely on the navigation bar. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about responsive design and how we can take this navigation bar onto a smaller screen, such as a mobile phone. To do this, we're going to start exactly the same way. Either come to the top, use the frame tool, or press F on your keyboard, come to the design panel, scroll down, and instead of desktop, we're going to go for phone. And it's your choice if you've got a preference for devices. I'm just going to click on the first one that comes up. And now we've got a brand new frame set up for mobile devices. So mobile navigation tends to be collapsed on the vast majority of websites. And what I mean by that is the menu's actually hidden until you click on what's known as a hamburger icon. So normally 3 lines, you click on that, and then the menu pops open. It's quite a common way to do things. So we're going to do 2 frames. So I'm just going to click the mobile frame we've got here and just press Control or Command and D to duplicate. So we've now got 2 frames. On the left-hand side, we're going to build the mobile menu closed. And on the right-hand side, we're going to build the mobile menu open. Okay, so we've now got our 2 frames ready to go, one for the closed menu and one for the open menu. And we're going to start by building the closed menu. So the way I like to do this, nice and straightforward, is use the R tool to create a rectangle and just drag it out so we can start editing the sort of height and width over on the right hand side. I find that much easier myself. So we're going to set the width to around 32 pixels and we're going to set the height to 2. Let's just scroll in so we can see a bit more, and I'm going to duplicate this 2 more times. So now we've got what we call that hamburger icon. I'm going to select all of these and group them. And the next thing I'm going to do is grab that same frame that we used in the desktop and bring it over to this mobile design. So select that, copy, click on the new menu and paste. And you can do that with Control C or Command C and Control V, or Command V. So with this frame selected, let's move it to the top left. And as you can see, it's now, because it's exactly the same, it's now stretched way beyond the page so you can't see anything. So let's drag this in to take up the right width. And there's some things here that we're not going to need. So on the mobile closed version, we're not going to be able to see anything but this hamburger icon and our logo. So let's go ahead and delete the links, and let's delete the button. Now let's select our hamburger icon frame and drag that into the top. And you can see this little blue indicator line slightly towards the right. That tells you where it's going to drop. Perfect. And now we have our closed version. What I want to do is also adjust the colors of our kind of hamburger icon. So you can either change it here in the fill or in the selection colors. And I think something quite dark works quite nicely. You can also customize these a little bit further by adding some roundness. So let's select all three of these and just dial up that border radius just to create a bit of softness on our button. It might seem basic, but this can do. So this is your mobile menu closed, completely finished. So next we're going to work on our open version of the menu. So let's take our current design over to our open menu by copying and pasting what we have so far over. And we're going to start by changing the hamburger icon so it's no longer a hamburger, but is instead a close icon. So I'm just going to rotate these lines to around 45 degrees and to minus 45 degrees. I tend to then just select them both and align them centrally and align them vertically. Perfect. So we've now got a button that would work. So we've got something that you can click to open the menu and then something you can click to close the menu. The next thing we're going to want is to bring back our menu items and our button. So let's grab both of those by selecting the nav links frame and the button itself, copying, come back to our menu navigation bar and clicking paste. And it's going to look horrendous for a second, but what we're going to do is we're going to select that navigation bar again and change the layout from horizontal to vertical. Next, we're going to select our close icon and our logo. We're going to create an auto layout by clicking the plus icon next to auto layout. We're going to set the width to fill the container, and we're going to change this, the auto layout direction back to horizontal. Using this alignment tool, instead of having it align at the top, we're going to align it to the middle. And we're again going to make sure that it's stretched to fill the width by changing the spacing from 148 to auto. So now what this means is that the navigation menu stretches across the top, just like we had here. But also that we now have different layers. So we've got the top layer, the middle layer, and the bottom layer. Now, on a navigation mobile menu, you don't tend to have things displayed in this way. They don't tend to go across, they tend to go down. So we're going to change the auto layout direction on our nav links to be vertical. We've also got quite a lot of spacing between our items. So I'm just going to bring this down just until it looks a little bit better. Somewhere around the 64 mark works quite nicely. It's also sometimes quite common for buttons to take up the full width of the frame on a mobile device. So feel free to go ahead, select your button and set the width to fill. So you've got three options: fixed, hug, and fill. We were on hug and we just changed it to fill. So that now stretches to fill the entire width of the screen. You can leave it here. Another few changes that I tend to make is on mobile, I tend to make the buttons just that little bit bigger so it's easier to click on a mobile device. And there we have it. That's how I would take a modern and simple, this is a very stripped back navigation bar, and take it across the different devices. So take it from desktop onto mobile. So this is now responsive. It would work well on different devices, and your developer would know, or if you're developing, you'd know when you head into the development phase what you should be doing for each device. If you want to take this a step further, you can explore prototyping with Figma, and we'll just do that quickly now. So over on the right-hand side where we've been working in the design panel, let's switch to the prototype menu. What we're going to do is then come into our navigation bar. We want to select our hamburger icon, and you can see this little plus icon towards the right. We're going to click and drag from there, and we're going to then just push ourselves onto that mobile menu. So just hover over the mobile menu, open and release. And now what that means is when you click, you're going to click on that hamburger icon, and it's going to navigate to the open version of the menu. To go back, what we're going to do is click on the cross or the close icon and do the same thing. So click from the plus icon and drag back to that closed version. And you can see our two arrows now. When you click on the hamburger, you're going to open up the menu. When you click on the cross, you're going to close it again. And we can preview this. So let's select a device just so we can see it in something. And let me just double check to make sure I get the right one. So our width is 430, our height is 932. So let's now select something like the iPhone 15 Pro Max where it's 430 by 932. And then what we're going to do is where you see Flow 1, we're just going to click on this little preview icon next to it, and it will pop open a mobile device for us to check out our design. And once that's loaded, you should see your design pop up in that mobile preview. So we've got our logo on the left and we've got our hamburger icon on the right. We're going to click this and it's going to take us through to our open menu, and we're going to close that again. and it'll take us back. So there we go. That is how I would build a navigation bar in Figma. Now, this is a very stripped back and basic navigation bar, just so I can teach you those fundamental basics. Let me know if you'd be interested in also learning how to develop something like this in, say, Framer or Webflow. So just drop a comment below if you'd like to see that in a future video. But if not, thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.